Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for men who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of their lives. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. Today, we have an incredibly rare opportunity to sit down with the founder of Reddit.com, Alexis Ohanian. Founded in 2005, Reddit has become one of the top 10 most visited websites in the world, with over 280 million unique visitors per month. Now, if you aren't familiar with the site, it's basically considered society's virtual water cooler for small talk about the most obscure interests you could imagine, to public debates, and even live Q&A sessions with presidents, including Obama and Trump. So how did they do it? How did Reddit go from a tiny idea to a global phenomenon? How did they manage to achieve that growth on a whopping $500 advertising budget? And how do you, as a company and a brand, market and advertise effectively on a platform like Reddit, which can be an extremely vocal community? We'll learn all of this today and much more. We'll even dive into Alexis's marriage to tennis pro Serena Williams and the coming challenges they'll face as expectant parents. So with that being said, please help me welcome Alexis Ohanian. Well, Alexis Ohanian, welcome to Self-Made Man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I think it goes without saying that we should probably start at the tip of the iceberg here when it comes to the company that you founded about 12 years ago now, which is Reddit.com and one of the top 10 websites in the entire world. So for those who are unfamiliar with Reddit, I know there's probably not that many people out there who aren't, but just in case, I'd love to start there. What Reddit is and why you started the company.
Sure. So Reddit is, well, one, it's come much further than our humble beginnings. Reddit is now home to over 100,000 communities of passion, and each one of these communities is a place where users start conversations about whatever is most interesting or relevant to them. It could just be a question, or it could be a photo or a video, who knows. And this makes up the zeitgeist for the English-speaking internet. We have not yet tried to internationalize, although it is coming. I'm very excited about it. But, it started out as an accident, really. My co-founder, Steve Huffman, and I had actually been working on another company. We'd spent about a year and change, our final year and change of college at UVA, working on an app that would let you skip lines when ordering food. And so you'd be able to order right from your phone. It was called My Mobile Menu, or for short. and we thought it was going to change the world. And we labored on this. I remember talking to every restaurateur in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then we eventually got a chance to pitch Paul Graham on it. Now, this is before Paul started Y Combinator, but we'd heard him give a talk in Boston called How to Start a Startup. We tracked him down. I pitched him. He loved it and gave us a lot of encouragement. And so a few weeks later, when he did announce Y Combinator, which was a first, it was this chance to basically get $6,000 per founder, so $12,000 for us to live off of for a summer in Boston while we were working exclusively on our startup. And we applied. We figured we had a great shot because we'd already met Paul and he loved our idea. And then we got rejected. But the next morning they called us back, and this was credit to Paul's partner, Jessica Livingston. She pounded the table for us to be in the program because she said our idea wasn't any good. It was too early. I mean, it's still too early. We still don't have cell phone ordering really. And, but we were good, or at least good enough to take a chance on. And if we changed our idea, they would let us in the program. And so the new idea that we changed into was Reddit. And the goal back then was just build something that solves our problem every morning when we wake up, like to find out what is going on in the world. Because even in 2005, it was clear that there would no longer be just one front page of news from just one source, because it was already obvious that there were going to be infinite sources of content in the future, in the very near future, and that there needed to be some kind of agnostic front page for all of them.
And it has a certain mechanism built into it as well. If you could dive into that and where your idea for that came from, that really allows the community to voice their opinion about the quality of that particular post.
Yeah, upvotes and downvotes. It was originally text. It was just interesting and boring. And we quickly changed that because that didn't feel right. And I wanted iconography to represent it so it would be more universal and simpler. And I was experimenting with a bunch of different systems, like 5-star systems. That was dumb. And eventually settled on this up and down, thinking that people would see it as I can push this content up with this vote or I can push it down with this vote, because our front page algorithm was actually first of its kind. This is, again, back in 2005. So before the newsfeed on Facebook, Steve had devised a really clever way to basically make sure the most interesting stuff bubbles up higher and higher and gets more prominence, and then over time starts to fall down. And it's a testament to that ingenuity that we had such a dynamic and interesting front page all the time, even when we were still much, much, much smaller. And that was the fundamentals of it. We launched comments a few months after that. Comments worked the same way. So the best conversations would bubble up. And again, to this day, there's no commenting system on the internet that even compares. And it's the reason why so many great conversations happen on Reddit. It's why, in fact, nearly all of the actually most substantial and interesting conversations that happen online happen there. And it's because of that hotness algorithm. And then the only other big change really was allowing users to create their own communities. And we knew that was always going to happen from the start. We just didn't have enough users until a few years in. And that really gave birth. That was the sort of Cambrian explosion of Reddit, because now if you loved beards, you could just go create a beard community, or multiple beard communities, depending on how much you love facial hair. But that really kicked it in motion, because now Steve and I were not the arbiters. We were not the community managers of all the communities. We actually could scale that. And, Reddit had an interesting life. We were acquired pretty early in 2006. And then we left 2009, 2010. And then Steve and I both came back full time 2 years ago, actually. It'll be the 2-year anniversary next week, or in a couple weeks.
So you're pretty famous for having this massive, massive launch budget when it comes to your ad spend and your ad dollars, right?
$500. That is actually to date all of the money we have ever spent advertising Reddit. And
so walk us through that. You launched the site, you hit publish one day. And now what? How do you get the word out there? And was it simply a matter of users finding the site, posting content, and that content getting indexed by Google, and it's strictly organic, and word of mouth? But walk us through what that looked like.
Sure. And I'm being deliberately glib with the $500. It's these social platforms have to grow organically. If your social platform does not grow organically, especially in the early stages, you haven't actually made something that people want. And it seems a little self-evident, but it's true. One of the things that we knew we had to do early on, was build something that people wanted. That was the mantra of Y Combinator. Again, it seems self-evident, but it's easy how many founders distract themselves doing a bunch of other things that are not talking to users and writing code. And so when we launched, I was the non-technical founder. So aside from some basic web design, I wasn't writing any of the Lisp to build the site. That was Steve. So it was everything from taking users out to coffee, or basically camping out at a coffee shop down the street and just sitting people in front of Reddit for the first time, getting their impression, taking notes, watching them use it, asking them questions, having them talk out loud, like really rudimentary user research. There was begging bloggers, because back then there was no social media. And so the only way to really get that kind of grassroots attention is with bloggers, and begging them to try to get coverage. And that worked to a certain extent. I mean, the best first bump we got was from Paul Graham himself, who linked to us in one of his essays, so one of his blog posts. And that drove a few thousand users, a number of whom signed up and stuck around. And then we kept iterating on that key part of the product, which was, how do we keep these users submitting content and feeling engaged? So we created a leaderboard on Reddit, which I'd love to bring back, actually. We created a leaderboard so people could basically see themselves ranked in terms of the karma they got per day, top karma gained per week, and then top karma all time Karma was our reputation system. So if you posted good content that the community liked and you got upvotes, you would get almost a 1-to-1 ratio of karma for those upvotes. And it became a really strong mechanism to re-engage users. But we, in hindsight, actually had shockingly few tools to observe and monitor. We didn't even have analytics really to speak of. We built our own sort of hacky thing in 2005 that would, help us with tracking uniques and page views. But we didn't do any A/B testing. We didn't have a lot of the tools that we now have put into place in the last couple of years to really understand why we make decisions. It was all intuition and luck. And what we knew from the community side we had to get right was be really good party hosts. And that means, kicking up the riffraff and encouraging the kind of conversation that we want to see on the platform. And a lot of that stuff now holds true. I mean, we were still building out a lot of the tools for this, but Steve and I were the first mods on Reddit because there was only one community back then. Now there's 100,000 plus communities, and it's important we still keep that in mind because the tools we're building for our mods are the ones that are helping them scale the community building that makes Reddit really, really formidable. I mean, it's the reason why people trust their community on r/sneakers more than they trust any magazine or any celebrity or any tastemaker, because this is their peer group. And that's a powerful thing that we know we need to preserve even as we keep growing.
So what is your approach to moderation? Because one of the big benefits of the site, is the whole freedom of speech aspect, and y'all have been quite liberal when it comes to moderating controversial topics, which is great, and that's something we can talk more about here in a little bit. But how do you go into an approach to the moderation process? Because I, several years ago, probably around 2008, built a niche community as well, and it grew to a couple 100,000 people, and the vast majority of them were great. A couple of them were absolute troublemakers, and it's like this light and dark side of humanity that you get to see. And what's the solution to that?
Well, the heartening thing, as you point out, is that even when you have, in our case, 300 million monthly active users, this is a population bigger than Brazil. It's almost as big as the United States. And yet the number of people who actually have issues are actually in the thousands, which is encouraging on the one hand. Like, statistically speaking, it's actually a small number of people. The depressing thing is they account for disproportionate amount of work and an annoyance.
Right.
So we worked really hard on this, and we're still, it's always going to be an evolving process. When we came back 2 years ago, one of the first things that we did was change the content policy to put in better and clearer rules of the road and guidelines so that users never get harassed, or when they do get harassed, we can punish them, punish the sort of perpetrators of it. We knew we needed to put in these guardrails, and they weren't there. There was a 7-year period when we were gone, the founders, Steve and I. And, 7 years ago, it just wasn't as much of an issue because the site was a lot smaller and it was easier to handle. But with hundreds of millions of users, we needed a more effective content policy. And so we made that the top priority. And then policy is only as good as the enforcement of it. So we built a trust and safety team, which previously hadn't existed, that is specifically tasked with enforcing it. And then a community team, which is tasked with encouraging the positive stuff and helping communities grow and organizing AMAs, doing all these great things that users love. And then finally, we built out an engineering team that's called the anti-evil team, which builds software specifically to help the trust and safety team and community teams do their jobs better, like at scale, as well as to thwart evildoers, as the name would imply. And so, yes, we've generally tried to encourage as much conversation as possible. We do believe that more conversation is better than less. And we also think it's really important, especially now in the world, in the United States, that we get more people talking to one another and actually exposed to one another's points of views, because Reddit can really, really remarkably poke a filter bubble in a way that none of these other platforms really can. And that's one of our greatest strengths. And it creates friction. It does absolutely it does mean having content that like Steve or I personally feel is bad or just wrong, but still worth having there so that we don't make martyrs out of the people who feel like they would be silenced. And at the same time, feel like we're still, or at the same time, make sure that we're creating a space where people feel like they can still find their home on Reddit. And so it's a gray area for sure. And we're willing to walk that balancing act. And, we review our content policy monthly with all the heads of those different teams I mentioned to see really like what is trending, what's working, what isn't. And it's a living document. So it'll continue to evolve as Reddit does. But the end goal here for us is for everyone to be able to find their home on Reddit. And that's going to mean having people on the platform that we may sometimes disagree with, but from whom I think we can still learn from and better understand our world thanks to.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting challenge. It's an interesting challenge to have to deal with. Switching gears just a little bit here, you have a fantastic class that you did for Google, and it's available for free on YouTube. I'll link to it in the show notes. But I actually spent my morning watching that. And one of the parts that you talk about is the importance of making a great first impression. So whether that's the look and feel of your website, your Facebook profile photo, whatever it may be. And I found it fascinating that you guys, I'm assuming, have made a very obvious decision to keep the original look and feel of the site for 12 years now, right?
Not for long. Well, no, it was largely because we left, and I think none of the other stewards wanted or dared to change anything.
Right.
It's like when you leave home and your parents don't want to, well, maybe some parents do, but other parents don't want to change the room of their kid. I think it was kind of like that.
Just don't touch it. It might break. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm thrilled to say that we actually have a live version here in the office of the redesign, and that's actually going to ship Q4 for desktop. So desktop is getting redesigned. We've been testing it like crazy. We've A/B tested it already, and we know that the engagement it just goes up. So that's really encouraging. And then we've been doing user studies with Redditors and non-Redditors alike and getting that good feedback. And finally, we've also brought a bunch of moderators for a number of these communities on board, because one of the things we're going to do is streamline the design more, which is going to be great because it's going to allow more mods to do more creativity with customizing the look and feel of their community. But it also means reining in some of the crazy CSS hacks that are in there. And so we've had to do a little bit of horse trading with the community mods on this, but it's been really productive and great. And so it's coming.
Okay. So and it sounds like you've wisely gotten the blessing of the community, because I think if you just launch this, there's a very big chance of backlash, right?
Yeah. I think with anything, people don't like change just in general, but it really behooves us to get this buy-in. And it's funny. I spent a lot of time the last 2 years talking to execs as we've been building up the business of Reddit, and these execs of these other major brands and companies, they fall into two categories. They're either the companies that existed before Reddit or like before social media, and then the ones who existed after or were created after. The latter group understands this fundamental truth, which is people don't expect you to be perfect. People just expect you to be accountable and be genuine and authentic when you do screw up and deal with it. And it's the brands and the companies from that bygone era before that are struggling the most today, because I sort of take it for granted, right? Reddit is the platform for conversation on the internet, including conversation about Reddit. And so I take for granted the fact that like one of our first months of operation, a top story on the front page was that it was like Steve and Alexis are idiots. Why was the site down for 12 hours today? And like we had some bug or some problem and the site was down for half the day. And we didn't ban it. We just responded to the comments, explained what happened, and people appreciated it. And actually, I think bought us a lot of goodwill. And so as we approach these changes, now that we're back, we think about it the same way. Like, how do we get this buy-in? How do we, speak as openly and authentically as we can, knowing that there are things we're going to do, they're going to upset people. We are going to make mistakes, but we're going to try to handle that as well as we can. And we think folks will understand. And it's been a great run in the last couple of years. We've shipped all kinds of things, native mobile apps. Like we didn't have a native mobile app a year ago. And now it's a 4.5, maybe now 5-star app on iOS and Android. That was another thing where we had a lot of people telling us, oh my goodness, what are you going to do? Like you have this one third-party app called Alien Blue. There are all these other third-party apps that are just totally independent. Like they're never going to switch. And it turns out the opposite was true, thanks to some really great work by the team to just build and listen and build and listen. And so we feel pretty good about desktop getting the redesign too.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to see that. From a business model standpoint, from the outside looking in, it appears that you all have two primary sources of revenue, which is advertising revenue, banner ad space, and then you also have your gold status membership, if you will, which is $3 or $4 a month. Could you share some insights on that business model? Which one is, I guess, the biggest for you? I'd be interested in knowing, but was that the right business model to choose from? Do you guys have any plans down the road? But I think that'd be really interesting to share.
Sure. Yeah. Advertising is still our primary source of revenue. And we have a self-serve product, which actually just got a beautiful redesign and a bunch of new tools. The managed sales component, though, is still our biggest. And that's like a massive month-long Toyota campaign that launched a few months ago. It's big brands. It's managed in the sense that there is a sales team and a brand strategist and people working with them. But that's the bread and butter right now. And that's mostly because it's just easy. Reddit is, as you said, a top 10 website in the world. It's number 4 in the US. And all of those people, those 300 million monthly active users, are self-organized around passions. And this doesn't exist anywhere else on the internet. And so we have this monopoly on passion that's actually really valuable to advertisers because everyone's concerned about brand safety these days after these debacles on Facebook and YouTube. And so when they know that if they're buying a campaign that's going to run on all of Reddit's parenting communities, they know that the only content they're going to be adjacent to is relevant to parents because these communities have very strict norms. They have moderators that enforce as well as software that helps them do that. And it's actually the safest, most on message place they could be selling diapers because everything on that page is always going to be related to that topic of parenting or whatever it might be. I'm expecting a couple months, so Daddit is on my mind, and which is the dad community on Reddit or one of them. And so that's actually been a slam dunk for advertisers. And so long term, I think the ad business is going to continue to evolve because we have an ad unit that's actually unobtrusive and engaging because it's native to the content. It's a conversation like every other post on Reddit. And even brands, or actually I should say, especially brands can engage there because it fits. It actually makes sense. Like a brand being your friend doesn't make sense, but a diaper brand showing up in a parenting community answering questions about, I don't know, baby diapers actually fits. It's actually content. It's actually relevant. And so the ads are incidentally highly engaging. We're talking about minutes of engagement on average and not seconds. And so advertising is what we're doing now because it's been so effective and such an easy sell. Longer term, I think you hit the nail on the head with Gold. There are some changes I'd like to make to it because I'd like it to be more of a, more like a virtual good. The only games I play now are these free-to-play games like Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm. And if we make Gold more of a virtual good and make it something that can also be a reward for doing behavior that we like on the site, subscribing to 10 subreddits, you can imagine a bunch of different triggers for Gold that get people some early that then gives them the thrill of gilding someone, which is where the real magic happens, right? We actually have this social dynamic that's unique to Reddit, which is like a super upvote, which is now Gold. And I think there's a lot we can do with that. If you consider that most of the places that use this and do this so well are these free to play games, they've managed to create this as a system to generate high engagement and community, because these games alone are not as communal, or like it's just one extra layer of stickiness. Reddit, on the other hand, we already know has this extreme community component and is extremely engaging. And so the effect of what happens when we more intelligently use gold in the platform is very exciting to me, because we're not using it as like a crutch or a Band-Aid. It's an amplifier to what is already there. And that's, I think, where long term there's a lot of exciting revenue potential. Yeah, very cool. And I'm assuming that's going to be a big part of the new skin as well. The new present. Well, it'll be a little part, and we still got some more work to do in gold. But there are some changes that should be coming before the end of the year. Well, let's talk about, this is a perfect segue on how brands and companies should approach Reddit when it comes to marketing. One of the biggest sites in the world, as you mentioned, there's a lot of potential there for business and their products. But can you share some stories or examples of companies who've come in and not really understood the community that they're getting involved in, and how that turned out? Yeah, well, I mean, this is the same stuff our parents taught us. So it's funny how much basic social etiquette rules will disappear sometimes, especially for those brands, like I said, that were created before the internet or before Reddit, before social. And this is like, it's etiquette 101. If you walked into a new room, you got invited to some party, you don't know anyone there, and you immediately walked into the room, introduced yourself at the top of your lungs, and started handing business cards out to people and saying, hey, buy my stuff. Would anyone like you? Like, no. And it's laughable to think about that. And yet, there's a whole group of brands that would take this approach to digital, to social, and to platforms like Reddit, and be surprised why it didn't work out, or why people weren't, thrilled to be getting a business card shoved in their face. The good news is we've basically gotten through the worst of it. Most of those people they've either learned or maybe found other careers, because the irony is this is one of the greatest environments for starting a business the world has ever seen, because you actually can dip into the zeitgeist for whatever community you want to target. You can actually, you're not reading their minds. You're basically sitting at the water cooler with them while they're deciding how they feel about the world, and while they're talking to their peer group about this thing they're all passionate about. Like, it is unprecedented. And so you get these brands. Soylent is an example of one. I was doing investing back then full time, and I was I think we were the first check into Soylent, largely because the organic growth on Reddit was so strong. That community had generated so much fervor and so much heat around a meal replacement drink that we thought there had to be something there. There was a company called Beard Brand. I met this founder at an event once, Eric, and he came up to me and said that the r/beards community did an amazing job helping him understand what people actually needed from a beard brand. And they make all kinds of beard related goods, like, beard oils, beard combs. I happen to have a beard, so I'm sympathetic to this. And they basically got a free focus group out of the beards community just by listening, just by watching, just by paying attention. And, it turned out this guy was quickly becoming an expert on beards and understanding all things beard related. And so he started just being helpful. He started to just answer people's questions and join in the conversation. This is like 101. This is how our grandparents would have built a business, and in their little towns. And it's the same damn fundamentals, except now the conversation you have, which is ostensibly with 2 or 3 people, because it's on Reddit in a comment thread, is being seen by tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people. And so it scales way more effectively. And we've seen these brands come up, and we'll continue to see many, many more. And I think it's exciting because it also means just better companies, because these companies are going to have to be more keyed into what their users and what their audience actually wants. And we've done a lot in the last, call it 6 months, to make it easier for brands to participate on Reddit. One of our biggest focuses in the last few months was rolling out an update to our user profiles, which would let content creators have a space to share content that they're working about or start conversations about things they were thinking about. Because Reddit's discovered XKCD, Grumpy Cat. I mean, there's a lot of a whole range of internet culture that started on Reddit. And yet there's never been an easy way for a creator who's new to the platform to say, hey, I made this thing, like, let's talk about it. Because they'd have to find the right community, and they'd have to, like, there was a lot of nuance, there were a lot of barriers, a lot of friction. And so with the new profiles, now a user can simply bring their audience to Reddit, have them follow them on Reddit, and then share content directly with them because they know they're a receptive audience. And then that audience will share it throughout the Reddit network. So, I can make a webcomic, that I love, and my followers will consume it and talk about it on my profile. And then one of them can share it to the comics community because, she's a huge comics fan and thinks they're going to love it. And another can share it to the comics about turtles community because this comic happens to be about turtles. And it's authentic because the people who are sharing it are genuinely members of those communities. And so it doesn't trigger this weird self-promotional aspect because it's not self-promotional.
So if I could sum it up the way that I'm hearing it, the best approach that you could take would be to essentially give without want in return, right? Show up, be of service, participate, and just let people find out more about you and who you are through your contribution to the community rather than pushing your stuff onto people.
Yes, and I would recommend that in life.
Right.
And then to create a profile now on Reddit for your brand, Nintendo_America is a good example of that on the business side. And, they kicked it off with an AMA.
And real quick, what is an AMA for folks?
Oh, an AMA is an Ask Me Anything. So it's a crowdsourced interview with the world where the best questions get voted up by the people who are participating. Like that it's been much replicated or much copied, but none ever meets the success of the classic Reddit AMA. And so, they had the producer of Super Mario Odyssey on when they launched their profile. This is a great opportunity to introduce yourself after you create your Reddit profile. But then beyond that, the way we've seen smart brands use it is, again, it's a conversation starter. So basically every other social platform is ironically anti-social. If you go down the list, every other social platform is just you shouting to your audience. Rarely is there a conversation because none of these platforms are built for conversation. At best, you get a couple of @ replies, but no one is reading those other than the two people participating. And so what's been a huge flip in people's minds for social is that now that they can do this on Reddit, they can actually benefit from the wisdom of their crowd. And so we'll see people who they'll start in the morning with a question, asking their followers just like what, depending on what they're into, right? But let's say they're into beards, show us your beard selfie this Monday morning. And only on Reddit can you get a massive discussion thread with all these beard selfie photos, the best ones voted to the top. Or, if you wanted to ask for great beard puns because beards grow on you, you can actually get amazing discussions going and the best content bubbles up to the top. And it's like having your own writer's room and focus group right there on Reddit for you, because then that great content, just like it does everywhere else on the internet, it'll show up you just post it to your Facebook page a few hours later. And it's already been tested by your biggest, brightest followers, and you already know it's good messaging. And so you can pay it forward to that community too by, giving Fluffy Bunny 64 on Reddit, who came up with that great beard pun, a shout out when you post it to Instagram, when you post it to Facebook. And we're seeing more and more brands realize that they have to be their own BuzzFeed. And, for a decade, BuzzFeed has built a multi-billion-dollar business by basically getting the wisdom of Reddit users to create and vote on the best content and then repackaging it in a blog, right? This is the example of that every brand now gets to do for themselves and actually do it with the participation of their community.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Keeping track of our time here, I know we've only got a few minutes left. You've gone through really a full cycle, in your career now, right? At a very young age, you took on funding. You were part of Y Combinator, which was amazing. You had the pressure and the expectations that puts on your shoulders, right? It's not just you. You've now got people that, you might end up disappointing here that have high expectations for you. And you've also sold a business, and you've had an exit. What are some of the biggest lessons learned or words of wisdom that you could share with entrepreneurs having gone through both of those?
Well, I am grateful to have gotten our stake back in Reddit. That is rare, right? To be able to get ownership in your company back, to get it independent again. And I'm so grateful. And the only way we could be doing this is with Steve. What is my best advice? I guess the easy advice would be don't sell too early. But the reality of it is, that decision still changed my life in a really positive and amazing and meaningful way. And I'm grateful for it. So I think it would be that there are a lot of founders who early on probably think way too highly of themselves and their business, like the Silicon Valley stereotype of, we're changing the world, with our little app that tells whether or not it's a hot dog, right? But I think far too many founders, or at least for me and Steve, we didn't actually really appreciate what the full potential of the platform could be. And we didn't really have people around us to tell us that, frankly. Even Paul Graham and Jessica were saying, like, sell, like, this is a great opportunity, like, go for it. And I think that's it's obviously the world's a lot different from 2006, but I would encourage founders to definitely seek out those advisors, seek out those mentors, build a network of other founders who are your peers, who in some way or another motivate you or impress you, and go to them for counsel and go for advice. And ultimately, if you're lucky enough to be in that position where you can get the option of selling your company, just take some time to think about it and understand that it is still a pretty rare thing. And even more rare is the chance that one day maybe you'll get it back. So know that you're making it for the right reasons, and then trust yourself on it.
Very good, very good. You're going to be a parent soon.
Yes.
What are your biggest fears or expectations, or things that you're looking forward to about that phase of your life?
Wow, I am ready. I'm so ready to be married. I'm so ready to be a dad. Like, this is going to be a really exciting end of the year. And I am just, I'm looking forward to everything. And I'm probably not looking forward to losing sleep, but I consider this is going to be my great, like, this is going to be a great opportunity for me to do something that I've always wanted, to have a family. And I am so proud of everything I've done in business, and I hope to do even more. I'm planning on doing even more, but this is really, really special. So I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I have to ask you, when did I've cycled in that aspect of my life, been married, been divorced, have a phenomenal 6-year-old. And so I've learned a lot through that period of my life. When did you know that Serena was your life partner and she was the one?
Oh, this actually, normally I wouldn't really talk about it, but this actually just dropped literally today in Vanity Fair, so I can tell you. It was on my birthday, and she just called me up. We had spent the day together, and then I forget, she had to go somewhere for work, and we'd had this wonderful lunch with my grandparents and my dad and my stepmom in LA. And that night she FaceTimed me, and we talked about it, our day, and then she just basically just told me all this amazing stuff, and I just was so struck by it that I realized, like, I don't want to ever not have her in my life. And it's not, I don't know, it wasn't the most dramatic moment, but it was definitely the moment.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Well, I wish you the absolute best. This has been a phenomenal opportunity to get to know you and more about Reddit and your journey. And thank you so much for the time today. Besides going and checking out Reddit, obviously, if you're not plugged in there yet, where can people go to connect with you?
Reddit's the best way. Private message me. My username is KN0Thing, KN0THING. But yeah, PM me on Reddit's the best way, or drop a comment in on one of the threads on my profile or what have you.
Awesome. And last question for you, Alexis. What is your biggest challenge in life, personally or professionally, that someone in this community might be able to help you out with?
Hiring. I don't know. We're always looking for great engineers. That's probably the biggest thing on my mind most of the time.
Cool. Awesome. So if you're a rock star engineer, or if you know one, hit up Alexis, and that'd be great. Well, thank you once again. This has been amazing. I appreciate your time so much. And guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.